Scott Jennings
Because when you own as many libs as I do, you gotta put a place to put them all.
No,
I don't like that you can see my monitor and can be that quick to the sound bites, sir. Scott Jennings has had a bad few days on CNN, just getting crushed over and over again by his panelists. We'll start with a question that no one defending Trump you have a Scott Jennings B-roll? Yes. Yes. Oh, he looks different there. So the thing that defenders of Trump's federalization of DC's law enforcement can't defend is if you're making the argument, which they make more broadly, we can talk about, as we did substantively, the argument around DC. And we discussed that. But if you zoom out and you go, Trump's law and order, he wants criminals to be held accountable. How do you defend his January 6th pardons, right? Some of MAGA goes, oh my gosh, you're bringing up January 6th. It's a fair question. If you say he has the principle of standing for law enforcement, why would he pardon people who assaulted them? And I want to hear your answer until you go, that was terrible, but they won't say that. And so watch Scott Jennings just silenced as one of the panelists makes this argument compellingly.
I think it's important that people understand something here about law enforcement officers and at every level, right? Like I mentioned in the last segment, I come from a police family and I bleed blue. And I was on this set for many years defending law enforcement officers during Ferguson and during other times where police officers were getting bad raps on certain things, explaining the complexities of the job. And it really is something that I just cannot tolerate when Trump supporters are trying to sit here and act as though Donald Trump supports and backs the blue. No, he doesn't. You look at what Donald Trump did and what MAGA has done to the police officers who defended our Capitol on January 6th. You want to talk about spitting in the face? Donald Trump spit in the face of every single one of those officers who took that oath to protect and serve on January 6th when he pardoned those insurrectionist bastards and who wanted to take down our Capitol and stop the free and fair, peaceful transfer of power. So how dare he say this now? It is the reincarnation of George Wallace, of Huey Long, of the disgusting policies of the past that have this strong man desire to use.
Can we not, Scott? Can we not? Podcast listeners, he's making that face where he puts his finger on his chin and he goes, kind of like the Jim in The Office face.
Law and order and the fear and demagoguing for people that Donald Trump is channeling right now. And so how dare people sit here and say that he backs the blue? He abdicated that because you know what? He did not protect or defend the Constitution, and he violated his oath of office. You know who's...
Yeah, and just don't even worry at all when people try to gaslight you and go, what the hell, January 6th? That was like a bazillion years ago. Because all of politics, all of our debates are happening about principles. You have specific cases that are principles manifested as to why you have a stance on a specific thing, but you whittle it all down and it's about key principles, right? And so when they try to justify actions Trump is taking by saying he has proven himself to have X principle, so Y action makes sense, it's fine to go, okay, well, let's talk about that principle. Because fundamentally, Trump proved himself on two fronts to be completely uninterested in the legitimate democratic process when he did everything he did in 2020 and 2021. And number two, when it comes down to his own personal view and when it impacts him, he doesn't give a what about law enforcement. We saw that. And that manifests itself in more cases than just January 6th. That will come up in this next clip. But coming back to that of how do you defend a guy who went outside the law with all these schemes to try to stay in power after he lost? How do you defend a guy who pardoned? It happened, no matter how cringe you think it is to bring it up again. It's fundamental to who Trump is, who was so interested in rewarding people for doing violence on his behalf. He didn't care about the horrific things that the people he was rewarding did to law enforcement officers. Totally reasonable to bring up. Is it the only thing if you're saying you don't agree with Trump's federalization of DC law enforcement? No, you also need to address that standalone. But as a general principle thing, yeah, totally fair to bring up. Then you have Dan Coe bringing up these points.
This is about control and distraction for Donald Trump. If he were serious about cutting crime, he wouldn't be proposing cutting $400 million from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Department to regulate and help with guns, or cutting $500 million from the FBI, 700 agents, or the DEA with drug enforcement, or the Office of Violence Against Women, $100 million from there, right? This is about control. First, he went for the press, then he went for the universities, then he went for the lawyers, then the federal workforce, and now it's the cities. This is about him having control, making an example out of D.C. He's going to move on to these other cities, by the way, that also, as you mentioned, have the plummeting homicide rates that D.C. does, and also to distract from the Epstein files like he's been doing with all these things that he's been rolling out.
That's something we went through too, Trump's history on, or very recent record on funding and on staffing to initiatives that seek to lower violence, and how if you're making that general argument about him being all about law enforcement, then why is he taking those actions? And if you're making the argument that contrasted to Biden's record, Trump is pro law and order, then how do you answer for the huge progress that was made on reducing crime in the United States during Biden's term? Some of it, not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but some of it you can attribute to those huge investments in law enforcement and violence reduction and gun violence prevention, the big legislation on gun violence prevention. You absolutely can attribute some of that credit. And so they don't just want to make it about right here, regardless of what the crime rate is in DC. I want Trump to do this thing. They want to make it a broader thing. Democrats let things get out of control. Liberals want crime to run rampant. And Trump is the one who's going to bring back. Well, then why does his record prove the opposite thing? And Biden's record contradicts that as well. I swear eventually Scott Jennings is going to get to talk. This is about Scott Jennings, but I haven't heard his voice at all. Let's see here.
But a Republican would also tell you, and since I am one, I will, that it's not the guns. It's the criminals running around the streets of D.C.
I mean, by that token, you would leave the illegal guns.
A gun becomes illegal when a violent person uses it on another person.
That's
what happens.
You need to look a little bit more into how this. We're talking about where a gun starts and where it ends. Guns on the black market. And the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
Republicans don't support.
Then why is Donald Trump getting rid of all the programming, all the funding in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is the reason why the last 3 years,
the issue in DC
gun violence has gone down the most we've seen in the history of this country. We still have a lot of work to do. People still feel not safe.
Do y'all notice how all the guests are talking to each other and Scott is talking to the camera? It's like he can't get out of his head that he's just looking for MAGA social clips. Like he's just knowing that eventually a MAGA person who's not watching CNN now is going to be watching him in a clip on Twitter, and he's speaking right to them already. It's kind of jarring. Are we still doing? Oh my gosh, this is so 2017. Are we still doing this argument that it's not the guns, it's the people? Okay. Why do they do that? Oh, this has happened in arguments before. They go, so who shoots the gun? A person. Bob, what are you doing? Yeah, we know. But certain regulations that make it harder for those bad people to get really destructive guns can prevent further bloodshed. Like, hey, look at how other countries' data shows up. Hey, look at how our data shows up. Hey, look at how certain blue states. Oh, why is it randomly that red states have if you combine red states and you combine blue states, red states have worse gun violence? Why is it that in 2020, Trump voting states had 40% higher gun violence, or the higher 40% higher murder rate? There we go. Why is all those things? The reason I speak like that is because I feel like we've just done this a lot. That's why, Jaden. We've gone through that over and over again, and I get totally yoinked back because that's not, again, we talked about this in a different segment. If you know why we're saying something, I know why you're saying something. You believe that the benefit of people having whatever guns they want because of tyrannical government, or even if violence increases on average, their individual right to defend themselves in whatever way they see necessary, that you see that principle as more important than our principle of certain regulations that we think would keep people safe more. That's our discussion, right? So then when you speak at us like you think we believe the guns are flying around shooting people, or you believe we don't know that people are the ones who ultimately shoot the gun, but obviously we think there are ways related to the gun itself that we can prevent people from doing certain things. It slows the conversation. We're speaking past each other, or I'm speaking at you and you're speaking at the camera, literally. Then I saw this Trump clip circulating.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. I know Eddie's very talented. Crime is down in Washington, D.C. Street crime, violent crime by 25%. And that's people have seen, they've noticed a big difference.
And the murder rates are plummeting. We are now able to report that the murder rate is on track to be the lowest in U.S. history, in modern recorded U.S. history, thanks to this team behind me and President Trump.
Oops. So you see, yesterday, Trump saying things are out of control. Then you just go back a little bit and Trump was taking credit for the Biden era decline in crime. And then Kash Patel was doing the same thing. Which one is it? It's not the DC. We don't want to minimize, blah, 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 of course. But you're trying to make this a proclamation about how big authoritarian Trump has to come in and save us because crime's going through the roof. But clearly a different approach, your predecessor, has yielded good results on bringing down crime. So why are you lying to us about the truth on the ground? Then on Trump's direction of Smithsonian museums to reassess what's in their museums to be more aligned with Trump's vision of American history, as we talked about in that segment, how we believe Trump will interpret the African American History Museum and what should be in there and what shouldn't is one particular example that I think gives you a sense of where this might be headed. And you had one panelist saying, this is exactly what Russia does.
Okay, hold on, Arthur. Go ahead, Dusty. Just let me get a thought out. One of the first things Russia did after it invaded Ukraine illegally was have the Ministry of Culture review all the museums to make sure that they were sufficiently pro-Russian exceptionalism. It took over around 40 museums in Ukraine. It turned one museum in Mariupol, Ukraine, into the museum of Andrei Zvanov, who was Stalin's propaganda minister. This stuff happens all the time in totalitarian and authoritarian countries that want to whitewash history for the benefit of propaganda. It's not about highlighting, putting one thing in this corner versus that corner. It's the difference between history and propaganda. And museums should not be in the business.
So should we wipe out Columbus? Congressman.
Okay.
It's great points, but I can't stop looking at Scott's face while he does. He looked like he was a little pouty boy. No, Scotty, you upset, Scotty? Oh no. Yeah, I mean, this is what authoritarian regimes do. Is this the reason that Trump wants to be a dictator? No. It is a combination of factors that we cover every day. So don't you dare go, wow, they think if you ask the Smithsonian to review what's in their museum, then you must be a Hitler. No. Come on. Let's be serious here for a second. But let's not do the Biden thing again. If Obama were getting museums, okay. These are the people, again, who told us it was erasing history to say maybe we shouldn't have little kids walk into a school named Robert E. Lee Elementary School. Robert E. Lee, you are what I want to be. That was their song. This was their song in their school. We are America, but I wish we could be the Confederacy. That would be the song they would sing at school. And we went, I don't love that necessarily. And they would say, that's erasing history. And so if Obama directed the removal of Confederate statues, then directed museums to review to make it more to his liking, then got rid of any statisticians that gave bad numbers on the economy, then went after Fox News and got them to settle an absurd lawsuit with him while harassing them with his governmental power. And then, do you think that they would call him a dictator? Because I remember Fox News calling Obama a dictator for his healthcare plan, literally, for Obamacare, which was not even close to dictatorial, which was like a Mitt Romney plan back when he was governor. It was totally moderate, and they called him it for that. So just check yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate this show. Let's keep listening.
But I just think it is grand that right at this table, I can't hear from both of you. You can't even just say politicians should not be editing our history and trying to change our history. That's what they're doing. I don't believe they're changing our history. I don't believe that that's what they're doing. It is what he has been trying to do.
All right, we got to leave.
Yeah. Let me find, this one is, yeah, this is the one I referenced earlier. He says it's not taking things out, it's emphasizing and underemphasizing things.
Look, every country has horrible parts of its history. I mean, you can find me one that doesn't, and I'll throw you a bouquet. I think what the president is looking at, and I don't know this personally, but what are we going to highlight? Are we going to highlight that this young man who is probably going to win to be the mayor of the city of New York came over here as an immigrant, and now he may be the mayor of the city of New York? Find me another country where that happens in 2025. It is not a common thing. So are we going to highlight that part, or are we going to highlight 200 years ago what we did to Indians to take over the state of California? I'm not saying we should whitewash it,
I'm just
but
asking,
what are we going to show
why
off?
is this an either or? I mean, do you really
because
want
what you're going to highlight? You always highlight something.
But do you really want a history in which you...
It's funny that in his argument about the museum, he says we should highlight Mamdani. Like, I know what he means. We should highlight the American dream of being able to immigrate here, and then next thing you know, you're the mayor of New York. But let's put a Mamdani exhibit in there and see what they think of it.
What happened to Native Americans in this country?
You want to walk into the Air and Space Museum and talk about the two Challengers that exploded, or do you want to talk about?
You read about it. You read about it there.
But it could be over in the left. Yes, but it could be over in the left-hand corner. You want to walk in and say, "We were the first country to put a person on the moon. We were the first country to do this." And yes, then in the corner you talk about the things that we screwed up. That's the truth.
This is very Russia coded. You know, the first
I just say to
thing,
erase it. It's what you highlight versus what you. I'm not saying you should
another word
disappear.
for what you're saying is propaganda. And
so you want to talk about the Columbia blowing up? Let's walk into the Air and Space Museum and talk about
never
Columbia
do it
blowing
again.
up. But what about the accomplishments?
Okay, hold on, Arthur.
All right. This is not a put the accomplishments or put the bad stuff. I'm so sick of this too, where they go, all they ever want us to learn is the bad stuff. And it's like, do you know how many freaking times I learned about Neil Armstrong, one step for man, one leap, whatever. Of course I can't even, for mankind, one great jump for whatever, okay? But I know it well. Do you know how many years I learned about the triumph of Neil Armstrong? Great. He went to the moon. Good. Very cool. I believe that was real too, so don't think. A stunning proportion of the population thinks the moon landing was fake. I do think that was an achievement. I do think we should learn about it, okay? And if it was fake, that's also an achievement. That's cool. Y'all had those movie skills back then? Damn! But I remember eventually getting to high school and going, so like, what did he do there? Like, what is it that he did once he got there? He stepped and then he leaped and he put our flag. Okay. Great. What did I get? Good. Space exploration. Woo. But we do a lot of coverage on that. Don't act like we don't. Or the Alamo in Texas. We learned Texas history in Texas schools about 100 times. A little bit too much about the Alamo. It was good, but we learned a lot about it. Okay. Remember the Alamo? It went. Davy Crockett, squirrel hat. Got it. Okay. Drawing the line in the sand, saying, step over this if you're not ready to fight against the Mexican army. Santa Ana. And then people stepped over the line in the sand. And they all died. That was kind of a weird ending to the story, but it was heroic, right? We learned those things too. When you go to museums, there's a lot of epic stuff, but you can also learn about the bad stuff. And we know that's what y'all are going after. We know it. You can't lie to us about that.